I think a lot of people kind of overthink it and they think, oh, I don't have millions of dollars. I don't have 20% down to put on a property, and thus I'll never be able to start a real estate business.
Every strategy is going to have a downside to it.
Yeah.
Haters just only illuminate what the downside is. You know how long I've been hearing that BRRRR doesn't work anymore? Well, what they're saying is once you go to refinance it, it doesn't cash flow. Welcome to real estate in 2024. Whoa!
There are so many powerful ways for newbies to break into the world of real estate investing. And today, me and my good friend David Green, aka your former Bigger Pockets dynamic duo, are gonna be breaking down one of the most simplest and repeatable rental strategies of all time, the sneaky rental strategy. Here's what I love about this strategy. One, it doesn't require a 20% down payment. What? That's right, you only need 3.5% down to get started. Two, it is scalable, it is repeatable, and there are many ways to supercharge the cash flow of this strategy. And three, my favorite part, anyone can do it if you are willing to sacrifice short-term comfort for long-term gain. Gain for long-term gain. Long-term gain. It doesn't matter. Gain, all right? All in today's episode of Raw Build. Let's get into it. What a forearm.
That's my best. It's my best feature.
I think there's no more appropriate way to start this podcast other than the boys are back in town. Boys are back in town. That's right. It feels good to be back in the old saddle, my friend. How are you?
You do say that every time we get together. You said that at BPCon. You've said that at other times. I think it's time that we taught you a new song.
Listen, that's how much it means to me to be with my brother in real estate. How are you, man? I know it's been a few months since we've done a podcast together. I guess more than a few months. You seem to be staying busy with all of your businesses. So how is life post BP?
Man, there's been a lot going on. It feels like that was a whole lifetime ago, even though it wasn't that long. Just this economy is changing so fast. I can't remember a time in business or in history where it felt like every month or every 2 months, you're like, oh, there's aliens now. Oh, interest rates just did this again. Oh, now AI can do this thing. Like it's very hard to get a pulse on what's actually happening. I think it probably drives people a little crazy when they're trying to make financial decisions that are going to affect them for the rest of their life.
For sure. I think the main question on everyone's mind is, do you miss me?
Well, that part never changes. Just because the economy changes doesn't mean that my feelings
your
for
affection
you have
change. Good. Well, listen, the reason I wanted to bring you on this podcast today is you have mastered sort of this idea that I'm a big fan of, and I kind of did sort of, but I never really executed it flawlessly. And it's the idea of the sneaky rental strategy. If I remember correctly from a conversation we had 30 minutes ago, you were writing a book on the sneaky rental strategy. Yeah?
Yeah. So I got a book coming out January 7th. That's called Better Than Cash Flow. And then I have the next book I'm over halfway done with, which will be the sneaky rental strategy, how you buy a house every year.
Cool. So why don't we break down this strategy in excruciating detail, and let's just kind of level set here with people at home that may not know what it is. What is a sneaky rental strategy?
It's a way to take advantage of owner financing, which is the best kind of financing you can get in any kind of real estate, but still build a portfolio. So what you're basically doing, it's not super complicated. You just have to execute it the right way, is you're using a primary residence loan to get a property with anywhere between 3 and 5% down, depending on what loan you want to use. And then you're going to, in most cases, live in it for a year, though you don't have to. And then you're going to turn it into a rental, which is why we call it the sneaky rental strategy, because you didn't start off paying 20, 25%, even 30% down to get this rental. You put, say, 5% down, and then it became a rental. And so you don't use up all your capital, and you can buy more than one house every 10 years.
Okay. So let's break this down a little bit, because you said owner financing, but it's not really owner financing. Owner financing is more like, I consider that like seller financing, like I'm going to the owner and financing the bank. Are you saying it's a financing strategy that owners can utilize, or clarify that a little bit?
I shouldn't have said that, actually. Here's what happened. Your hair looks different than it did before. Like your coif is really filled in.
That's
and
right. I went to Turkey.
And I just lost myself a little bit there. Yeah. It's a
Okay.
primary residence loan. Every form of a loan is an owner. Like you're always going to own a house. That was a silly thing for me to say.
All right.
Sorry, I'm really nervous.
I wasn't going to say it on the. I wasn't gonna call you out to the YouTube subscribers, but okay. So restate your case, sir, from the beginning. Just kidding. Okay, yeah. So just a form of financing that
Primary residence loan as opposed to an investment property loan.
Okay, cool. I want to talk about why this is achievable because I think a lot of people typically, whenever they're wanting to get into the world of real estate, they oftentimes kind of over think it and they think, oh, I don't have millions of dollars. I don't have 20% down to put on a property. And thus I'll never be able to start a real estate business. But the interesting thing about the sneaky rental strategy is it's kind of like the opposite of a 20% down payment. It's far, far, far lower than that. So how much money do people typically need to execute this strategy?
At the One Brokerage, we can do a 3% down conventional loan. We can do a 3.5% down FHA loan, and you can always get a 5% down conventional loan as well. So it's anywhere between 3 to 5%. You're usually going to end up with the 5% range if you're continuing to do this every single year, year after year, because you can get one FHA loan at 3.5%, and you can get one conventional loan at 3%.
Okay. I guess I want to make sure because I feel like you're the resident mortgage officer on the podcast or on the previous podcast. Rest in peace. So when it comes to putting down a 3.5% down payment on a FHA loan, is there no official stipulation on an FHA loan that says that basically would prevent this type of thing from repeating? Because how many FHA loans can one have?
You can only have one FHA loan at a time. So you can get one FHA loan. Your first conventional loan, you can do 3% down instead of 3.5%. And I know we're not here to talk about financing, but it is worth noting. Everyone assumes FHA is a loan they should go to for a primary residence. Not the case. When you get an FHA loan, you're going to pay a lot more in mortgage insurance. It's called MIP instead of PMI. It's the same thing. And it never goes away. So you will have that mortgage insurance for as long as you own that house. I bought a house in 2013 with FHA loan, still have mortgage insurance. When you go conventional loan, even though it's a primary residence you're going to live in, you're going to have mortgage insurance when you first buy it. It will drop off. And so when you hit a certain number, usually around 80%, 75%, the mortgage insurance goes away. So usually in most cases, conventional loans are better, even though everyone talks about FHA. Personally, I think that's because loan officers make more money on an FHA loan than on a conventional. So most of them push people towards that. But for the person who's trying to buy real estate, it's very similar. 3.5 versus 3 to 5%.
Got it. So you can have one FHA
At a time.
after that at a time. And so at that point, is the move to refinance into a conventional? Okay.
Just get a 5% down conventional loan. You can buy a primary residence every single year and just keep putting 5% down on it. And what I found when I was doing the research for this book is that in most cases, the money that you save house hacking is around, in most markets, about 5% of the down payment of the house. So it's
what do you mean by that?
So like if you looked at how much money you were spending on rent, say it was $2,500 a month in rent, and you house hack, so you only spend $500 a month out of pocket. You're collecting the rest from your tenants.
Yeah.
That's $2,000 a month times 12 months is $24,000. That's 5% down on I just lost my 24,000. That would be
times. Don't do this to me.
Why did we forget how to do math as soon as we started recording?
We're getting rusty, pal.
It's been a while since we did a lot.
It's been a while.
So
it's been a while.
What is 24,000 5% of? That's what I'm trying to figure that out. I think
well, you would multiply. Yeah, I was gonna say multiply it times 20, and it'll be okay. I got it. 480,000. Is that what you said?
Yeah, it is. Thank you.
So I'm not that smart. Where was I 30 seconds ago?
So yeah, that's I second guessed myself originally when I almost said 480, but yeah, it's more than 5% down because most people aren't going to buy a $480,000 house. So what happens is the money that you save house hacking your first sneaky rental becomes the down payment for the future one, and then you save money again house hacking that one, and that becomes the money for the next one. And theoretically, you are basically, if you house hack correctly, saving up the down payment for the future property. The tricky part becomes making it cash flow when you move out of it. That's where the criticism for the strategy comes from.
Sure. Yeah, I think that makes sense. That's usually the pushback I hear too. So I guess the idea is you put 3.5% down. Are there no 3% down primary home options, or is it always straight to 5?
Is. No, there's a 3% down for conventional loans, but it's usually for your first primary residence. Most lenders don't offer that once you already have a primary residence.
Got it. Okay, so then the move would be 3.5% down for your first property. You live in it for a year, and then you put 5% down on the next one and 5% down on the next one.
Or you could do 3% down conventional loan, next year 3.5% FHA, then 5% down on all the future homes.
Got it. Super smart. Okay. And so the criticism is, hey, it's all good and gravy to buy a rental every year, but you're probably not going to cash flow. What's the rebuttal to that? Does that argument make sense, or is the argument more?
It is. It's every strategy is going to have a downside to it, right? Yeah. Haters just only illuminate what the downside is. You know how long I've been hearing that BRRRR doesn't work anymore? Well, what they're saying is once you go to refinance it, it doesn't cash flow. Welcome to real estate in 2024. Nothing cash flows. You can put 20% down on a house or 25% down. It's probably not going to cash flow either. So this is, I think, the struggle that every investor is dealing with right now. Even if I can save up the money to buy a house, how do I make it cash flow? Real estate is not nearly as easy as it was in the past. We had it really good. Some people took advantage of that. A lot of people still found something to complain about. They didn't like it. Now it's even harder than it used to be. And that is the reality. If you want a property to cash flow today, you have to be invested in figuring out how to make it happen. It is no longer buy a property, 3-2, put 20% down, it cash flows from day one. It's going to have to be a short-term rental, and you're going to have to pay attention to it. You're going to have to reinvest in it. You're going to have to do rent by the room. You're going to have to get something going on for you to make that property cash flow. And that's going to be tricky, but that's what real estate investors today are dealing with.
That's a great point, dude. I mean, my short-term rental portfolio is full of dogs. It's a dog pack. But the reason that they're dogs is because they've just been neglected over obviously I'm always improving and I'm always talking about running these experiments on my properties and some work, some don't. But there's a pretty clear correlation between the properties that do well now is because I've gone in and I've spent a lot more time making them the belle of the ball, if you will. And it's just it's one of those things with short-term rentals. A lot of people do think it's a set it and forget it method, and it's not. And that's pretty much you get all hyped up about any strategy. Yeah. And it's anything that's, there is no set it and forget it. I mean, right? Would it long-term rental, would that be the closest maybe?
Oh, that's even harder. If you put 60% down, you can set it and forget it. But then you're spending all your energy saving the next 60% to put down. So you set that and you put all the energy into something else. This is the economy that we're in today, and real estate is a reflection of the economy. It is not going to be easy. I personally think that the advice I've been giving a lot of people is stop looking to real estate to get you out of a job you hate and move into owning a business or running a business or doing something like that, and make real estate a piece of your financial picture where you're running a business, you're putting the profits into real estate, that's sheltering your income. You're sort of holistically looking at wealth building and seeing how real estate fits into that, as opposed to putting all of your eggs in the real estate basket and being eternally frustrated that you can't generate enough cash flow to live off of.
For sure. Yeah. I mean, I think I get it now. Your active income should come from your businesses. Your active income should really never be real estate. And I mean rental income. Mm-hmm. And everyone that I know that makes a lot of money in real estate, make it from active income or a business that's auxiliary to real estate. So flipping, active income, that's not rental income. That's just a business. Wholesaling, also a business that's auxiliary to real estate. Co-hosting, that's a big one. Property management, right? Going out and managing 10, 20, 30 properties, not real estate, just a business that's auxiliary to real estate. Rental arbitrage, not real estate, just a business that's auxiliary to real estate. So all the people that make a ton of money from real estate, it's never from rentals. It is usually from businesses that are sounding the real estate world, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and in the book I have coming out January 7th, Better Than Cash Flow, we talk about there are ways to build wealth in real estate that aren't just about cash flow. There's a lot of different ways. There's 10 ways here, and I think real estate is still an amazing vehicle to park money that you've already made. It just isn't a great way to build wealth out of nothing. You can do it. There's always a person that points out how they did it. They're going to be in the comments here telling me that I'm dumb. It can happen. It doesn't happen as easily or as often as what it did before. So when you and I host podcasts like this, we give advice to real estate investors or people trying to build wealth. We are basically offering the strategies that we see working today. This is not anything other than that, right? If you're a football player or a football team and a strategy worked in the 80s, that with the rule changes today, that doesn't mean it's going to work as well today. You have to adapt to what's going on. And I think that right now, if you love real estate, you should look at how you can run a business that is, like you said, auxiliary to real estate, related to it. Invest your profits into real estate and let them grow in the property, which will eventually cash flow, which will eventually have equity pay down, which will eventually appreciate. It just can't be the only thing you do like it was in the heyday.
Got it. Yeah. So let's go back a little bit, because I think the whole idea for this podcast was, what is a good strategy? Yeah. What is the strategy for 2024? I think that this one can't be set it and forget it, simply because you're living in the house with people. So you're going to be actively managing it. So let's kind of map it out. You buy a property, and then we come into this qualm or this rebuttal like, hey, how do you get to cash flow when you turn it into a rental? Seems like there's a couple ways to do that, but really it might be a waiting game, and it might be one of those where maybe you don't buy one every single year, but you buy it every 2 years or every 3 years once rents have actually caught up to your mortgage payment. Is that something that you advise, or do you like to kind of stack it up once a year?
I mean, ideally you want to buy a house once a year, but you can only move at the speed that they cash flow, really. So the game becomes, in the book, how do I make it cash flow? I call it forcing cash flow, and in the book, Better Than Cash Flow. But in the Sneaky Rental book, I talk about different strategies of how you create cash flow. You don't just find it. You can build ADUs. You can convert existing space into additional parts of the house. You can use the rent by the room strategy. You can buy a house and then convert it into a short-term rental. The David Green team was doing this in San Diego pretty successfully. If you went to go buy a short-term rental in San Diego traditionally, you would have to put your name in a queue and hope you got picked out of a lottery or waited your turn in line to get a short-term rental permit. But if you were a primary residence owner, you jump to the front of the line. So we would get house hackers that would buy a house to live in, convert the garage to a studio, move into it, rent out the main house. Now, boom, you get a short-term rental permit because this is your primary residence. A lot of doors open for you when you move into the primary residence owner of a property. So medium-term rentals with the house that you bought that you're going to be house hacking, or splitting spaces was another one. Can you put a wall down the middle of the house and put a kitchen out on one side and kind of create a makeshift ADU to where you're living in one room and you create extra bedrooms where they weren't there, or you create extra units where they weren't there. But you're going to do something like this if you want to be able to continue investing in real estate going into 2025.
So is the crux of the Sneaky Rental property strategy that you're going to house hack? Is that sort of how, that is sort of the main piece of this? This is basically like house hacking on steroids, because it's just carving a path to continually do that?
6.5 hours later.
Sorry, dude. Somebody came in my, like a FedEx person came in screaming, threw me off there.
I'm confused about this. This happens all the time. That's your house. You're at your house, right?
No, this is my office, and I have an office inside of a bigger office.
What? This is crazy. That's just not that's not a bedroom at your house.
This is a background of an office, and I actually have several different angles with different cameras that I could have used, and never ended up doing that.
Wow, look at me. Look at maybe I'd stop listening. Maybe this is why the podcast. I
am moving to a new house, and you're going to have to help me design my studio to look as good as yours, Big Papa.
I'm going to get you the John's section of this sign. That way, I'm Papa and you're
Papa
John's.
Can you do a Papi, maybe Papa and Papi?
That's what they call it in Mexico. Papi John's. Papi Juan's. Okay, so the crux of the Sneaky Rental strategy is house hacking, right? Isn't that's kind of like the main strategy that this is all wrapped around?
Basically, you're solving the problem of how do I save up the money for a down payment of a house? It's incredibly hard to do if you're going to put down 20% and then 25% once you get over 4 properties. That is, you're taking advantage of the primary residence. I almost said it again. I don't know where this owner financing thing comes
like, don't do it.
Yeah,
don't do it.
Taking advantage of the primary residence loan. That will create additional problems for you, which is namely, it's hard to make a cash flow. So the next step becomes, how do I modify the house? How do I run the house? What skills do I have to build to be able to make it cash flow? When you get that down, there could be some construction knowledge that you have to gain, right? Like, how do I put a bathroom into a house where there wasn't one before? How do I develop a basement? How do I identify the properties that would work for this? I have a whole chapter set up on when you're walking a property, what do you look for? What kind of floor plans would work for this? What is it, your eyes, I call them real estate goggles, that you should be looking for that are going to make it work? It's not easy. And if you're expecting it to be easy, you're going to be disappointed no matter what strategy you use. Short-term rental operators are losing unless they're entering into the competition. Medium-term rentals are doing poorly in a lot of markets because they're oversaturated. We haven't had traditional rentals working for a long time now unless you put a lot of money down. All of real estate is hard. This is the kind of hard that can allow you to scale a portfolio if you build the skills and you find the right deals and the market
That's for sure.
works for you there.
If you can do it right now, you can do it anytime. But I mean, let's talk about house hacking a little bit, because I think that considering that's sort of the main strategy and you're just using the sneaky rental strategy to supercharge it, I mean, who is house hacking right for? Because it, aside from it being hard to make the numbers work, I still feel like there's maybe some personal comfort or discomfort that someone must be willing to sacrifice in order to even execute a strategy like this. So who's kind of the ideal person? Because I'm a house hacker, not now, but that's how I started. I often say it's the best way to get into real estate. It is the catalyst for wealth, but it isn't for everyone.
Mm-hmm. I describe it in the book that you've got a spectrum. And on one end of the spectrum, you've got comfort. And on the other end, you've got profit. And this is life. You want to make more money? You got to work overtime. You're going to be uncomfortable. You want to have better tax incentives and structures? You're going to have to start a business instead of being a W-2 worker. It's going to be more uncomfortable. You want to make money house hacking? You're going to give up some comfort. There is no way around it. If your mind is trying to figure out how to have both, I want to have comfort and profit, you'll just be frustrated. So this is good for people that are willing to sacrifice comfort to make money. So if you got a big family, it's going to be tougher for you. If your spouse is not on board, it's going to be tougher for you. I think your ideal avatar is an ambitious, hungry, dedicated person who's future oriented, and ideally they're single or their partner is 100% on board with what they're doing. And this is supplementing another plan they have, like starting a business. I really like, in wealth building, creating situations where you are uncomfortable, because that's the incentive a lot of people need to level up. Right. You, Rob, I've watched you make yourself uncomfortable many, many times. And when we're uncomfortable, there is a feeling that we don't like. It is not comfortable. And nothing is as powerful in human nature as what we call negative reinforcement in psychology. I used to think negative reinforcement, like a lot of people think, means if I'm going to do something bad to reward you. That's not the case. Negative reinforcement is the removal of adverse stimuli as a reward. So if I take a rat and it touches the button that I want it to touch and I feed it a pellet, that is positive reinforcement. Negative reinforcement is stronger. And that would be if the rat is being shocked, and the only way to make the shock stop is if they touch the button. You're way more likely to get people to change their behavior if you're taking away pain or taking away discomfort. So if you think about like the cycle of you and I's life, you buy a property, you take on a mortgage, you feel stress. You feel a sense of urgency. Oh man, I'm going to be losing money on this thing. That drives you to get there, meet the contractor, meet the design person, schedule the stuff, take action, because you don't like that feeling of I'm going to lose money and I'm falling behind and this is going to go poorly. Really, most of the work that we're doing when we buy a new property, we start a new business, we do anything positive, is we're trying to get rid of all the stress we took on when we signed up to do the project. You need that to motivate yourself to go take the action. It's usually not enough to just have positive reinforcement. I want financial freedom. Okay, well, that rat wants a pellet, but it's not going to push a button just because it wants a pellet. It's going to have to be hungry. And then you're getting rid of the feeling of hunger by taking action. So you asked about who's the best person to be house hacking. It's the hungry person. It's the person that is willing to be uncomfortable and then work to get out of it, who's going to do the stuff that we talked about to make these things work and then continually do that scaling. But it is very difficult. I'm curious to know if you know anybody who's making money right now in business or the economy that's not taking on discomfort to do it.
Usually not. No, there's usually some level of sacrifice. I mean, I'm a great example of this, where I think a lot of people tend to look at me and say, "Oh my gosh, like I don't know, like when I started, if I start a business and it goes well pretty quickly, like Funkit Interiors. That's my interior design company. That business has quadrupled in size since launching in September. We're booked. We've hired 4 full-time interior designers. We're hiring more. I mean, it's just crazy. And I think I was talking to someone recently and they're like, all you do is provide the leads. And I'm like, no. I've sacrificed everything for the last 4 years, creating content, the best content in the world, free content. I've stayed up nights. I've missed dinners. I've had to walk out of the theater to go address Airbnb issues. And I made a video about it. I have basically been in the weeds of all of my businesses for like the last 4 years. And because of that, when I start a business now, it is easier because of all of those hard times. So with that said, I think I have a easier time, but I mean, I'm still sacrificing everything, every moment of the day for everything I do. I just think I don't, maybe I just don't show off. I don't show off the stress part of me.
No,
I guess is the moral of the story.
Yeah, but I think you can recognize it's the stress that drives you to take
Absolutely.
action.
Yeah.
When you're comfortable, you don't move.
Yeah.
So don't bother doing this. Don't bother doing anything in real estate in 2025 if you don't want to be stressed. If you like your comfort, if you like to just do everything the same, if you're looking for an easy hack around a difficult life, I don't know what the answer is, but it's not this. Go do AI until AI takes your job, and then you're going to be super stressed.
This is a good way to think about it. I think probably what I'm getting at with the whole being uncomfortable and discomfort stuff. You mentioned kind of your analogy is like grabbing a wolf by the ears. That's like real estate where, you got this wolf by the ears and if you let go, the wolf gets you. And I think it's probably more in reference to like taxes, all that stuff. I kind of think of real estate like sharks, the whole, like if a shark stops to swim, it dies. And I feel the same way about that, where I am perpetually uncomfortable because it takes stress and sacrifice for everything to continue to run. If I stop making content, my businesses suffer. And I know that. So it's the life that I've signed up for. And I think real estate's very, very much like that, where if you're getting into this, you're signing up for a journey that's uncomfortable, but it will make you wealthy at the end of the road.
Yeah, and you're going to be some form of uncomfortable if you don't. You're going to go work a job you don't like. You're going to be upset about that. I mean, I've heard people say choose your hard, right? Working out's hard. The health benefits or the health costs of not working out, they're hard too. Working extra hours and working overtime is hard. Being broke is hard. You're going to have some kind of hard. You just have to choose if you want it to be productive or not. And I think for house hackers, there's people that look for a way to make it work, like I talk about in the book. And there's people that look for an excuse to not do it. They look for a way to justify why they shouldn't. And we all pick and choose every day which camp we're going to fit into.
Yeah. So house hacking, not for the faint of heart. It does take some discomfort to be successful in that. And then you're still kind of in this world of, you're never really leaving the house hacking world with the sneaky rental strategy, because you're basically leaving one house hacking situation to the next one. Can you talk a little bit about what the trajectory looks like? I know we talked about maybe you start with a 3% loan, then you put down a 3.5% loan, and then a 5% loan. But what are what's like a pretty realistic timeline? Do you think that most people starting today will have accrued 10 properties 10 years from now if they execute this strategy? Or is it a little bit more staggered than that?
No, 10 properties in 10 years is the blueprint that I put out in the book. A green print, if you will. But I think people should shoot for.
I will, by the way.
You will call it a green print?
Yeah.
All right. Thank you for that. I know that you wear a green sweatshirt. I couldn't help but think.
That's right. You inspired me.
Because of me. So if you get 10 houses in 10 years, oddly enough, it's not going to be the cash flow that gets you out of house hacking. It's going to be the equity that you build in those properties. Now, here's something that I've learned about equity over my time as an investor. You don't know when it's going to hit. Like, we may have 5-6 years of stagnant stuff. You may see the market drop, but equity tends to come in big jumps. It's like you might have 7-8 years of nothing, and then they print money and all the real estate goes up. So our brain doesn't like it because we like to have a predictable, reliable rhythm or pattern to how wealth is going to grow, kind of like a mortgage pay down. But even mortgage pay downs don't work like that. You don't get as much progress in the beginning. You get a lot more near the end. So my advice to people is to just grind and grind and grind and do the house hack thing. And at least try to make them break even. Hopefully they cash flow a little bit over time. And then when the economy makes jumps, if you got 8 houses, you get a huge jump. You'll have a whole bunch of equity. You can get out of house hacking at that point. You can use the equity to buy your dream house and have a very low mortgage, or buy it with cash with the properties you already had. Or rents are going to go up. Your cash flow is going to skyrocket. You can use that money to pay the mortgage of the house you're going to go buy. Eventually, you do get out of this rat race that we're talking about. I can't predict when it's going to happen because none of us know how the economy is going to work. We just know that when the tide does go up, and eventually it will, of inflation, the more buoys that you have in the ocean, the more you're going to do.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think that's kind of the game, right? Is like most people have a tough time visualizing that they can get pretty crazy equity from their houses. But I mean, just in all the primary residence houses that I have bought over, I mean, since really getting started, my first property that I bought in Kansas City, I bought it for $159K in 2013. I sold it in 2016 for $215. So I think we made $40K. Now that house is, I don't know, probably worth like $400,000. Doesn't matter. I don't own it anymore. Then I went to LA. That house, I put 3.5% down on an FHA. That I have $500,000 roughly in equity. Then I moved to Tennessee. I put 10% down on that. Or what was the order? I think I put 10% down. We operated it. I moved there, lived there for 8 months, came back. And I mean, really, I've owned that property now for 2 years, 3 years. That has $400,000 of equity. I bought a house in Houston that now has $200,000 in appreciation. So like you add it all up, and just my trajectory of moving from house to house and turning them into a rental is well over $1 million at this point. Not well over, but over $1 million. And so if I was working a 9 to 5, like my retirement would already be paid for basically. I'd be making $100K, I guess like maybe 130, 40, 50, somewhere in there at an ad agency right now. But I would be very comforted knowing that I actually have like $1 million of equity in my real estate portfolio. And that's just me making dumb, crazy mistakes here and there over the past 5, nothing methodical, nothing genius other than I actually bought houses whenever interest rates are low, and I took the opportunity. And I think luck and opportunity come together to form a beautiful portfolio for most people over the course of 30 years.
Yeah, when you give yourself 30 years, that's exactly right. And it's kind of one of the reasons I'm slightly critical of the influencers that say invest in real estate, have a 5-year plan, quit your job. You don't know what the economy is going to do over a 5-year period of time. You don't have enough control to stake the trajectory of your life on a timeline like that. Give yourself 25 years, 30 years, and if you happen to catch the right wave of 5 years and you can quit early, like, cool, do that.
That's crazy to me. I don't know. I made a video on my channel about a month ago that's called like why quitting your job won't make you happier. And I think the problem with like this idea of quitting your job to do real estate is that most people are trying to replace like a pretty solid salary. I was making 110K before I quit, and golly, man, I mean, I was making more than that, I guess, with all my side hustles. I was making a lot more than that consulting, and my Airbnb was also paying, but it was just like, it's hard to do that. It's not easy to change it. And I think for most people, my message is always more simple. I'm like, no, let's not quit your job, but let's help you make an extra $2,000 a month. Because if you can make an extra $2,000 a month, you now have $24,000 a year that you can live life on your terms with. You can go out to eat whenever you want. You can take trips. $24,000 a year on top of the salary that you already make is life-changing. Yep. What's not life-changing is, replacing your salary with real estate, but still not actually getting to live more because, real estate, the money comes and goes pretty quickly.
Really, you live less. If you're doing real estate, you need to keep a lot of money in reserves. You need to plan for things that are going to go bad. Money that would have gone to pay for a dinner or a car or vacation needs to go as CapEx for that new roof. And you actually have to be more conservative and careful. There's been a trend of criticizing W-2 workers. I'm just not a fan of it. Like if you hate it, I don't want you to stay there. But there's a lot of people that are probably content. They had a good job. They were grateful. And then they got convinced that there's more to life that they were missing out on. And so they needed to jump into the world of real estate. And then they lost a lot of money, a lot of security, and they took on a lot of anxiety, and their relationship suffered. And their ability to parent probably suffered because they're not paying as much attention to their kids when they're worried and stressed about money all the time. I think a lot of harm was done in the name of this, like, there's more that you deserve and you got to go out there and get it. I'm much more a fan of what we're talking about today. Like, have a degree of stability and certainty in your life, work hard, and then add onto it with buying a property every year. Or if you can't, like you did, every 2 years is fine. In 10 years, you got 5 houses. If they all appreciate by just $100,000, that's $500,000 of tax-free money. Like, how many years does it take to save up $500,000 after taxes at your normal W-2? It's crazy.
20?
Yeah.
I don't know, a long time. I mean, the only way people, in my opinion, there's no data, but just the regular everyday person will never just have a swath of $500,000 ever. The only time that happens that I've ever heard of is they bought a house and that house appreciated over the 5 to 10 years that they owned it. And most of the time they sell it and then they put all that money into the next house. And then they live in a really nice house that they're probably over leveraged on. But most of the time, when I hear of anyone saying, "Oh, I got $200,000 or $300,000 or $400,000," it is nearly 100% of the time they sold a property.
Yeah. Only other exceptions I think of are maybe if you have a 401k at your job and they have some kind of like a investment match or something like that. Mm-hmm. Some jobs will offer that. And over the course of 15, 20, 25 years, someone's continually investing a part of their paycheck. And so, but even then it's very similar. You want to put it in something you don't think about. You don't want to put it in something that you're like, how do I get a little bit of cash flow so I can immediately quit and move on to the next thing? You're much better to just find a race that you can sustainably run. Find a job you like, find an employer that you can live with, find a profession or career you can be proud about the work you do, work very hard, improve yourself, get promotions. At a certain point, maybe go become a self-employed business person. I think you and I can agree. There's a lot of growth that comes out of that. It can be personally very fulfilling because you're constantly being challenged and having to work on some of the areas of yourself that are weaker. Make money that way, and then just keep socking it away in real estate and then wait. And at a certain point, you are going to get these big runs that we've seen. And then you've got all that safety. Much better than the people that are just in a dead sprint to quit their job in 3 years, accumulating as many doors as they can possibly get. And then they're disappointed. Like right now in the short-term rental market, can you imagine not having any money to put into properties? I don't know what you do if you bought something too high and then the market got saturated and you don't have any extra cash to invest because you've been siphoning money out of the account to live off of. These people are in a bad spot.
For sure, man. Yeah. One little caveat. I know maybe like 1 or 2 people that have gotten these large $200,000 to $500,000 swaths from getting lucky on crypto, or maybe like a stock. It's pretty rare. So real estate is just a very consistent game. I'd love to have you on for a part 2 where we talk about forcing cash flow in the rental strategy, because I think that's a whole nother rabbit hole that we can go down. I agree. I think adding square footage, short-term rentals, co-living, pad split, all that stuff is such a great avenue. But if people want to kind of learn more about any of your books or anything that you're doing, where can we point them to get in on your content?
I'd check out my social media right now, David Green 24. Anywhere you go, Instagram's probably the best. They can also check out davidgreen24.com or my podcast, The David Green Show, on Apple, Spotify, or YouTube.
Maybe I'll get asked to be on it one day. I look forward to that invite. But for anyone at home that likes this idea of kind of building from the ground up, building wealth with very few rental strategies, I actually did a podcast with Coach Chad Carson, and that video kind of blew up. I think it's got like 200,000 views at this point. But it very much talks about building a small and mighty portfolio and how you can retire a millionaire if you take the low and slow approach. So if you want to watch it, you can click right here. Of course, after you like and subscribe, but I'd highly recommend this. Lots of positive feedback from the old YouTube audience. All right, catch you guys on the next episode. Go here. Bye.